Shalom. Welcome back to another lesson. I'd like to start off by giving all praises, honors, and glories to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Barakah Dash, giving double honors to the apostles, bishops, and out and teach well. And last but not least, I want to give my peace, blessings, and salutations to the elect. Sacrifice to you all, so wherever it may be located, and may the blessing of the elect be upon you and your household, Shalom, the hopeful elect. I just wanted to do a video on actually like a few topics. It's going to be a history lesson. I don't really have any precepts lined up. Before I started this lesson, I was thinking of how I was going to essentially create this lesson because, we can get numbers 1 and 18 and dispersing and scattering. But this goes into many subjects, many topics, right? You have two distinct groups. You got the Creoles and the Cajuns, okay? And these two groups are known for having a lot of soap, a lot of flavor down there in Louisiana. I don't know what it is, but it's just been like these past few weeks I've been doing videos on Louisiana history, right? And going into the culture, the music, you got the literature, and you even got the folklore that they have, the whole loup-garou, and which all goes back to Jake, really. So let's go ahead and read a little bit from this is the AI, DeepSeek AI. It says, certainly, I asked AI to give me some information on the Creoles and Cajuns. It says, certainly, the Creoles and Cajuns are two distinct cultural groups with deep roots in Louisiana, each with unique histories, languages, and traditions. Origins: Louisiana Creoles are descendants of French, Spanish, African, and Native American peoples who lived in colonial Louisiana before it became part of the U.S. Now, you have to be careful because when they say Spanish and French, you got to find out which Spanish and French they're referring to, because around this time you had the arrival of the newcomers, the Sephardic Jews and the Marranos. And they were language. A French-based Creole language or colonial French. Culture. Creole culture is a blend of European, African, and Caribbean influences seen in food, gumbo, jambalaya, music, zydeco, jazz, which is Jake, right? And architecture. You got the French quarter-style homes. Identity: Creole can be of any race. Now, you have to be careful with the term race because how people determine race is by appearance, which we know that the race of a man, let's go to Numbers. Actually, let me do this since I know the exact. That so far I've read Bell and the Dragon, and all these different books that are not mainstream, I guess you could say. They're not really talked about as much, right? This is Numbers 1 verse 18. It says, and they assembled all the congregation together on the first day by the house of their fathers. So A race is determined by the lineage of your father's seed line, right? You can have children and they can mate with other people, but as long as the seed of that man can be traced back to an Israelite man, okay, whether it be one or two generations or even 500 generations, then that descendant, right, would be an Israelite. And that's how it goes for the other nations as well. You know, if it's an Ammonite, you had an Ammonite ancestor, right, and you trace your lineage, your father's lineage, all the way back to that man, you would be an Ammonite, no matter how your parents look. But here in this society, they classify race based on the parents, which just brings a massive ball of confusion. Okay? Now, I want to see if I thought maybe I had an article going into race. Maybe I did it. Okay, maybe I'll look for it on another time. Let's go back to the AI. Now they're going to talk about the Cajuns. Okay. Well, actually, let's read a bit more. It says Creoles can be of any race, as the term originally referred to people born in the colony as opposed to European born. Many Creoles are of mixed ancestry. It says strong Catholic for the religion influence due to French and Spanish colonial rule. Because, well, and this is actually the tricky part, because a lot of those Creoles weren't really Catholics. They were Sephardic Jews. Just they feigned themselves as Catholic, but inside their homes they were keeping the law, statutes, and commandments. Now let's go into the Cajuns. It says the Acadians are descendants of, I have a lazy tongue, a French colonist exiled from Acadia, modern-day Nova Scotia, Canada, by the British in the mid-1700s, La Grande Délagement, right? They resettled in southwest Louisiana. Hopefully my French wasn't too bad. Language traditionally spoke Cajun French, a dialect distinct from Metropolitan French. Culture, known for Cajun cuisine, etouffee, boudin, crawfish boils, music, Cajun music with fiddles and accordions, and festivals, Mardi Gras, Guerilla de Mamou. Identity, strong rural working class traditions tied to fishing, farming, and trapping. Religion, predominantly Roman Catholic, with traditions like Cajuns, Mardi Gras, and more rural celebration than New Orleans version. So they're the same people, man. They're truly the same people. Now they will show you key differences, but when you look at them side by side, they all act the same, right? That's why people say down there in Louisiana, they say that the so-called white people down there are different, as in they have flavor. You know, they're different than the average white man that you will meet in Iowa or in Nebraska, because a lot of them so-called white people down there in Louisiana are jakes. Okay, now I looked this up, Passé Blanc, right, or Passé Blanca, that's in French. Okay, now when you look up Passé Blanc, the meaning, it's getting hot. I might have to turn my car on. When you look up Passé Blanc, right, it says, or Passé Blanc in Louisiana Creole, translate to passed for white in English. It refers to light-skinned, black, or so-called mixed-race individuals who assimilated into white society. So during that time of, Jim Crow South, you had a lot of Israelites that passed as white, and they used that to their advantage to get higher paying jobs. I was reading this comment. Give me a second. Let me turn on this car. I'm hot. Fucking hot. At that time in the Jim Crow South, you had individuals who were able to pass as white and assimilate into society, especially Esau society, and they used that to their advantage. I was reading this comment. This individual said that his great grandfather, right, was a black man, and his grandfather came out looking white. Now he was able to move around and get particular jobs and essentially start the family's wealth because a lot of those Edomites did not know he was black or he had a black father, right? They all thought he was white. So you had Jakes that, that acted white, that kind of permed their hair just so that they can hide from the persecution and the racism that was going on at that time. And that's why Esau had to come out with laws like no mixing. The Jake man cannot get with the Edomite woman because they know that the seed of a man is through the father. But they had no issues, right, with an Edomite getting with a Jake woman. Okay. So it says historical context. In Louisiana, it says due to racial hierarchies under French, Spanish, rule and later Jim Crow laws, many Creole of color, gens de Collier Libres, had European ancestry and light skin. Some chose or were forced to pass as white, right? And they even lost their heritage as a form of that because you had situations where a Jake man would marry an Edomite woman, and the Edomite woman will be fine with it because he looks like an Edomite, right? So what would happen is that the Jake man will have Jake family members that he can't bring to his wife, or else the secret would be exposed. There are also times where you have a Jake woman who looks like an Edomite, and she will get with an Edomite man who is extremely racist, okay? And they would, get together, marry, but fear always came upon the Jake woman because there's a chance that if she has a kid, the kid might inherit her grandparents' skin color. The dark complexion might come out a bit darker than her. So that was always an issue, okay? And, that brought a lot of fear and intimidation and just all around stress. So it was a time of Jake really, hiding and doing whatever they can to avoid the wrath of Esau Edom, okay? Some chose or were forced to pass as white to avoid discrimination, gain economic opportunities, or escape violence. This practice was especially common in New Orleans and rural Creole communities where racial lines were sometimes more fluid than in other southern states. Family secrets. Some families hid their black or mixed ancestry for generations to protect their status, okay? So there you go. They often call them quadroons or octoroons, okay? These are all different bywords that they have for people who are white passing. And then these are examples, you even have it now in these modern times, right? When you click on this video, let me see.
What's real and original is in your bones, not inspired by some famous face.
I'll be honest, until I'm in an all-white space and people don't realize that I'm mixed.
Look white passing, but if you look at the guy on the top left, he looks like a straight-up Edomite. Even her, she's white passing. She has Negro ancestry, Latin ancestry, right? Northern and Southern Kingdom ancestry. When you look at this guy, I think it said his father was a so-called black man. But look at him. He looks like a straight-up Edomite, man. And he's funny because when you watch this video, he talks about how when he's around white people, when all the black people leave, right, at a party or a function, they start talking shit, not knowing that this dude is also black himself. So it's like he's playing a double agent. He's able to fit among the Edomites, but also be amongst Jake as well. And that's exactly what was going on back then. You had Jakes who passed as Edomites who were able to fit amongst the regular Edomites and used that to their advantage. Okay. So there's a whole lot of history, right, about these two different groups, these two distinct cultural groups and people. Let me also get another video. I'm gonna go to my type in Acadians. Now I'm not gonna play the video, but whenever you brothers and sisters get a chance, you don't have to watch the whole thing, but go into the exile, right? The exiles of the Acadians from what you would call France, Spain, England. Okay, you had these two different groups that were being exiled from France and all these different European countries because of their religion. Okay, and they came down to Louisiana and they established colonies within that area, and they started mixing with the other Edomites within those areas. So when they say Spanish and French, you have to be careful, because not all the Spanish and French were Edomites. You had Jakes that came from Spain and right during the time of the Renaissance and settled in the Americas. Lord willing, I can do a lesson on that. If the Spirit hits me, I can go into that. But let me also get this right here. I'm gonna show you guys something. Okay, Métis, Canada. Now what you guys see here is people call the Métis, right? A Gadite tribe from Canada. Right? But also, when you get a bigger map, they also border like this northern part where you see the Dakotas. Get the U.S. map, U.S. and Canada map. Okay, right here. So this is where the Métis people dwell. Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, Alberta, right? You also had them dwelling in places like Montana, North Dakota, Minnesota, South Dakota. And I was telling Elder Passé, the Ra'ash, I was like, look, I don't believe that Gad is 5% of the population in those areas, because Gadites were numerous in those areas, man. It was a lot of them. So where did they go? I said they had to be passing as so-called white people. And I found proof of that. Now, when you look up the Métis tribe, right? Their history, is a lot. But one famous man in history is this guy called Louis Riel. And his mother was a French Edomite, or she could be a Jake, right? We don't know. But the way it is, she was a French Edomite, and his father was a Gadite. And when you see the picture of
one of the greatest sins of the Canadian government is that they've put to death.
Here, all these people are Gadites. I know, it's crazy. They all look like Edomites. This is the guy right here, Louis Riel. He looks like a straight up Edomite, but he's a Gadite. Why? Because of his father. And this is what was going on in those areas up there in Canada, Dakotas, Minnesota. You had Gadites who were mixing with the Edomites, right? The French and Spanish settlers, the British settlers, and this is what their descendants look like, Métis Nation harvesting rights. Look like so-called white people. Look. Let me see if I can. Yeah, look. That dude, he says he states that he's a Gadite. He's actually a chief. Okay. Now we do have the whole situation with the $5 Indian, right? You got brothers that speak about that. You had people who signed up to the Dawes Rolls because they had a Gadite mother. That is true to an extent, but that's not the case all the time, because you also had Gadites that passed as white. Same with the Southern Kingdom. Okay, the story of the Métis in Canada. So this all just goes into the scattering, right? The dispersion of the nation of Israel. Real quick, let me go to I think this is Matthew. Yeah, Matthew 23, verse 27. No, let me type Matthew 23, yep. And I'm going to read it. Let me go to Ezekiel 35, 34. Let me just type in scattering and see what comes up. Yep, this is Ezekiel 36. I was looking for something in Matthew, but I guess it's not there. I might have gotten the wrong chapter. This is Ezekiel 36, verse 19. It says, "And I scattered them among the heathen, and they were dispersed through the countries, according to their way and according to their doings, I judged them." So this is the judgment of the Lord. And we always say, or I should say, this is Elder Zion Olive, right? He would always say that the scattering of an Israelite is not really with them mixing with the nations, right? The scattering starts in the mind, because what happened is that we took a part of their ways, we assimilated into their way of living, and left the customs of our fathers, okay? And through that, we became heathens. So the scattering is really in the mind. The scattering is in the mind because Israel was losing their heritage. They were losing track of who their power was. Okay? Many scriptures talks about that. Deuteronomy 32, right? It talks about how Jerusalem waxed fat and kicked and forgot the Most High. Let me read this again. Ezekiel 36, verse 19. "And I scattered them among the heathen, and they were dispersed through the country." So Israel was dispersed. Here in America, Jake is dispersed. You got Israelites coming back looking like every nation on the planet Earth. And I went briefly into a history of it, right? You got the Gadites, the Métis people. You also have the Cajuns, the Creoles, who they all represent the dispersion of Israel. Okay? Let's go to Hosea. Actually, Deuteronomy 28. 64. I was confused, 68 and 64. This is Deuteronomy 28, verse 64. "And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people, from the one end of the earth even unto the other. And there thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone." So these Israelites that came from Spain, from France, the Huguenots, right, the Acadians, they came into the Americas. They were the first settlers of the Americas. They're the ones who established the colonies. Yes, America was established by Jake. All right? America was established by Jake. The first few presidents were Jakes, or Israelites, Negroes. So these, you see these weird Israelites running around like these Moors and these Kemet guys when they say America was established by the black man. They're not wrong. To a certain extent, Jake did establish these colonies, okay? Jake did establish these colonies, but over time, they were removed out of power, and they lost the vocal voice, within the American society. Okay. So from there, let me go to Hosea, the 8th chapter. Oop. This Hosea 8 verse 8, it says, Israel is swallowed up. Now shall they be among the Gentiles as a vessel wherein is no pleasure. Up until now, because the Lord is starting to take pleasure in his vessels again, which were the vessels of Israel, starting with the elect. The Lord is starting to rejoice in his people again through us coming back and acknowledging first our offense, right? Because we offended Yahweh Shem Yashah, and then from there, right, we acknowledge our heritage, and our heritage, we acknowledge who we are, and everything lines up. We can start getting back to the customs, right? But for majority of our people, there's still a vessel wherein there is no pleasure, okay? For they are gone up to Assyria, right, which is here in America, the Assyrians, a wild ass alone by himself, a wild donkey. Okay, Israel is likened unto a wild donkey. Normally a donkey is supposed to have its master, but majority of our people, they're likened unto a wild donkey by himself. Ephraim has hired lovers, and those lovers are those other gods, right? You can read about that in Jeremiah, the 3rd chapter. Okay, verse 10, yet, yea, though they have hired among the nations, now will I gather them, and they shall sorrow a little, right, for the burden of the king of princes. Okay, so we were hired among the nations. We became their lovers, right? We worship their gods. We bow down to their cultures and their customs. But the Most High is about to make an end of that. He's going to gather us again. Okay, and this time he's going to gather up the elect. I'm going to end it off with Jeremiah. I think out of the land of the north, because we're dealing with the history of the America, so it's only appropriate that we read this scripture. Jeremiah 3 verse 18, in those days the house of Judah shall walk with the house of Israel, and they shall come together out of the land of the north to the land that I have given for inheritance unto your fathers. So that's both the northern and the southern kingdom, okay? But not only in America, but all throughout the world, the nation of Israel will be gathered, okay? So I just wanted to speak briefly on this right here, Passé, Blanc, okay? Israelites looking like Edomites from both the northern and the southern kingdom here in the America, North America to be exact, USA and Canada. So yeah, hopefully this lesson was edifying. I didn't really go too in depth. My computer is kind of iffy right now, so I don't have the desk and everything to read the articles and go more into the history. But Lord willing, I can maybe sometime during this week. But with that, I'm gonna go ahead and give all praises on this. Yahweh Shai, Ba'Hashem, Workout Dash, give a double honors to the apostles, bishops, and elders of the millstone, while peace, blessings, and salutations to the elect. Shalom.